Hello everyone. Just before we start today's recitation, I just wanted to let everyone know that the grades for assignment 2 are out if you haven't already seen them. I think I have graded you generously, but if you don't feel so, you can contact me, email me about it. And well, I think most of you did a really good job on on the second assignment, and you can expect the grades uh, the weekend after the accept until date to be released. So week 3 grade should be released next week when I've got everyone's submission. And good job. I'm not seeing people using too many free lates now. So good job saving them. I think you will use them in the future. I think in the next two or three recitations where the assignments could be particularly challenging. So good job on that. And starting with today's recitation, this is recitation 5, and we're going to be going through something called flowcharts and pseudocode. So the good news is we're going to be taking a break from HTML for some time. Maybe next week also, not so much of HTML. And we're going to be learning some new things. And later on, I think 2 or 3 weeks down the line, we're going to be using them in HTML and improving our web pages, adding functionality to it. So when I say functionality, so just giving you an overview, we're going to be studying these two topics today, flowcharts and pseudocodes. We'll be creating some of them online, and you're going to be just as an output for your assignments or anything, you're going to be expected to submit an image, which you can download from there, or a text file for the pseudocodes. And just giving you an example, I think I missed it. Okay. So to do any functionality, if you want to do any operations like add two numbers, let's say you want to make a calculator on your website. So all of these calculations or logical things or some equations you might say, these cannot be done in HTML directly because HTML doesn't support like give me an input X, give me an input Y, do X plus Y, display that. That's not possible in HTML, and that's why we'll need JavaScript in the future. And this you can consider to be an introduction to coding. We're not going to be coding anything in this. We're just going to be this. These are tools, flowcharts and pseudocode, that helps you in thinking about how we code. So it's basically an introduction to coding in a way that it will help you uh, think in what way to code or think up the logic, and then you will be able to implement in your code going forward. So these are the two tools that help you with that, creating flowcharts and writing pseudocode. What they are like this. So flowcharts are diagrams that depict a process or a computer algorithm. It can be thought of like a visual representation of the code. So once you have these two things down, if you are given a problem, it's sometimes it's a good practice to create the flowchart, write the pseudocode, and then write the actual code. And that's why like these are easier to think of rather than directly start coding. Coming to pseudocode, and it is an algorithm that may be derived from a flowchart. So we're going to be seeing how if we create a flowchart, how we can write a pseudocode from that. And then the pseudocode can further transformed into any of the computer languages using a proper rules of that language that is called the syntax of that programming language. So a pseudocode can be translated into any of the most of the programming languages like C, C++, Java, JavaScript, Python, and so on. So it's basically very generic and uh, not linked to any specific programming language. So starting with flowcharts, these are some things you should know and basic rules of flowcharts. So these are the main symbols that we'll use. There's a start and an end symbol, which is represented by an ellipse. So whenever you are starting or ending, that should be in an ellipse. Arrows, which are supposed to connect these blocks. Then we have input and output, you represented using a parallelogram. Process where inside this box you're going to be doing all the calculations, and most important, decision, when you have a decision to make. If this thing happens, then I do this, and that thing happens, then I do that. So wherever you have to make a decision in your problem or in your solution, then you'll use this decision diamond block to do that. So for example, let's see you are given an example to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. And this is a really simple task, but how to write a code for it, or like how write a flowchart, these are done using the rules. So this is an example. So we start. So start and stop would be the first and the last blocks of your flowchart always. And one more thing to mention, a flowchart always flows from the start to the stop. So it will always go down. No arrow will be going up in somewhere in the middle. They can go sideways, no issues with that, but it's gonna be flowing towards the stop sign. So then we get the input temperature. That is the temperature you want to convert into Fahrenheit, and that would be in Celsius. Then you'll do the calculation, that is Fahrenheit is equal to 1.8. And see, because this is a process, it's in a rectangle. And then after you get the Fahrenheit temperature, you're going to be outputting it or giving it or displaying it, whatever you have. And then we stop our flowchart. And we see this, the thing on the left is the pseudocode for it. So so start is like start will always be begin, stop will always be end. You always read the input. So these are some keywords which will be common. Output is displayed. So this is something, it's very easy to translate the flowchart into this. So as you will see more examples, you will see what are the common things and how you can easily translate one to the other. So this was just the basic intro, and don't be worried if you did not understand some things. This was just to give you the flavor of flowcharts and pseudocodes. And now we're going to be doing some hands-on examples. So for this recitation, I have 3 examples. I'll do one with you and how to do that. And for the rest, I'll provide you the solution, but I would still suggest that you try it yourself and then see the solution and see like what other things could be there. So this is apps.diagrams.net, and you need to give it your drive access. So I'll just authorize it. You can give your Scarlet mail to it. So this is a one-time thing. You won't be asked to authorize every time. Okay, why is it happening? Okay. Okay. So I'll just create a new diagram. So this is the file. So we always want it as .xml, or even this is fine.draw.io, but .xml is the standard. So I'll change it to that. And make sure when you change the name of your file, do not remove the extension. And let's call it my first flowchart, and choose a blank diagram. And then we'll click on create. Just click on yes on this one. So make sure you follow all these steps that I'm doing here, and then you should be good to go on your flowchart. So this is a space, you can think of it as as you use MS Paint or something, but it's a little more easier to build flowcharts in this. How we're gonna do that? So the symbols we discussed are on the left. So let's say you want the start here, and this is how you do. You just drag and drop. You see you can adjust the size, shape a little bit, however you want it. And then once you're satisfied, you can fix the shape. And if you want to write on it, just double click on it, and I'll say start. So this is my first block, and there's various ways. There's various way to color it as well. Why do we need color? Is it makes it easier to read. So so the shapes that are the same usually are colored with the same color, so that it's easier to read a flowchart. Once you have like long and big flowchart, it makes the interpretation of them a bit easy if the specific shapes are in the same color. You won't want to like have all the ellipses in different color, then it won't make any sense. But the color coding is like your syntax in HTML that we used. So having a different color makes the readability of the code easier. Similar to that, that's why we need colors. Next, let's say I want an input block or input slash output, and let me call it input, and let me give it some other color, blue. So now once you have two blocks, you have to connect them. So either you can use arrows from here and you can change the shape and length of them, join them like this. Or what I find easier is just click on the start block. Once you see these light blue things, light blue arrows over here, just click on one of them and drag it to the box you want to connect it to. So I wanted to connect to input. So I'll just select the point where I want to connect it, and I'll connect it here. And you see it's connected. Uh, there's nothing more to do. There's some more things on arrows. You can even write on the arrows. So arrow one, but usually it's not necessarily. I will tell you when you need to write on the arrows or when you do not. Usually it's when you want to make a decision, you click on, you write something on the arrow to tell which decision you have taken. So more on that a bit later, but this is like the basic building blocks and how you build your flowcharts. These are the instructions. Whatever I told you, I have wrote them down in case you miss it, or you want to get back, you want to see it again. You don't have to see the video. So these are just the instruction. Okay, one more thing: how to get your flowchart. So let's say you want to make a submission or something. So we just go on File and we click on Export As, and you're gonna be exporting it as an image. So either PNG or JPEG, and that's what you're gonna be needing for your submission. So let's say I click PNG. And let me just open it in a new window. You're gonna be downloading it and it's gonna be downloaded on your system. And I do it. So I've got my picture for it. So this is how you'll use flowcharts if you want to take them outside. So just note, like whenever you make a submission, you click an image. So export it as an image on your system and then upload it for your assignment or anything. Okay. So moving to an example, or let's see pseudocode first. So let me go through some resources. So if you just click on this link, you're going to be directed to Canvas. So here are some few resources we have for you in case you want to refer after the recitation. So flowchart symbols and their meanings. And there are some example flowcharts which are there, which you can refer to. So I'll suggest going through it after the recitation as it's a good, or when before you start an assignment or quiz, just go through it. And even the pseudocode reference. So here you will get, for example, input is read. So you're going to be getting side to side comparisons of the flowchart to the pseudocode and how to write it. So some of the examples are here and some examples of some common pseudocodes, like find the largest of three numbers. So how to write them, how will you write them and convert them is given here. Okay, so make sure you go through it once. I find it to be a very good resource in helping for this particular recitation. And let's jump into our first example and see what we can do. So this is how you're going to be given a problem. So let's say there's a company that needs to calculate taxes that it needs to pay for its last year earnings. So they need to calculate the tax on the income, and the earnings are the difference between the revenues and expenses. So the company has its revenues and has its expenses, and the tax rate is 20% if the earnings are less than 500,000. Otherwise, they're going to be taxed 30%. So this is our problem. Uh, just pause the video for a second and just read it again and see, try to solve it on the paper. Like if you are given some value of revenues and some value of expenses, Let's say 1 million is the revenue of the company and 400,000 is its expenses. If you're given this problem, how will you go about solving it? So try and think about it for a minute. And then we'll see how to construct a flowchart and write a pseudocode for the same. Okay, so if you have done that, we see it's very easy. We just calculate the earnings from here, from the revenues and expenses. We subtract the expenses from the revenues, and whatever we get, we check that if it's less than 500,000 or not. If it's less, we tax it at the 20% rate. So we multiplied it by zero point 0.2 to get the tax. Otherwise, we multiply it by 0.3 and get the tax. So this is the main logic behind this, and let's see how we can do it using flowchart. So first thing we need is the start block that we already have. Next, we need other inputs. So what would be the inputs over here is what are the values we need to do all the required calculations. So here we need revenues and expenses. So we need two inputs. We don't need anything else from there, and we can't do with anything less than that. For example, if we are not given expenses and only given revenues, we cannot tell what the tax would be. So we need both of these. So these are going to be our inputs. So for example, this would be revenues. Oops, sorry, my scroll is a bit weird. And then we need another input. So we're going to be having another parallelogram. And this is going to be expenses. So we connect these two. After we have revenues and expenses, we're going to be calculating the earnings. So to make any calculations, we need a rectangular box. Let's have it in a different color. Purple, I'm not used it. Okay. So we're going to be calculating the earnings, which is equal to revenues minus expenses. So after we have these two, we can get the earnings here. So at this point in the flowchart, we have the earnings. Now what we must do is make a decision based on these earnings. Are these earnings more than 500,000 or less than? So whenever we have to make a decision, we use a diamond block. And we're gonna be connecting this to this. And let me enlarge it a little. So let's say our earnings greater than 500,000. So this is the decision we have to make if the earnings are greater than 500,000. So whatever the outcome of this block is, so a decision block can have multiple outcomes. So either the earnings can be greater than 500,000 or they can be less than 500,000. So these are the two outcomes we can get from it. And based on both of those, we know what we have to do. So let's say if the earnings are greater than 500,000, so we know that the tax that would be calculated would be 30% of the earnings, right? So if it is more, so we're going to be using process again because we need to calculate the tax. Again, the same color, and we're going to be doing tax is equal to earnings times 30%. So that is 0.3 times. And this is the situation when the earnings are greater than 500,000. So if earnings greater than 500,000, if the answer to it is yes, we follow this path and calculate the tax like this. Otherwise, if it's not greater than 500,000 and less than that, what we want to do is tax is equal to earnings times 20%, which is 0.2. And this is the answer. uh, we follow this path when the answer to the decision is no. So see how I'm writing? Just click on the middle of the arrow and you can write. Okay. So at this point, we have calculated the earnings in both cases. We have calculated the tax in both cases. And now we want to display the output because either it's more than 500,000 or less than that. We have the answer in both the cases. So we need to display the output. So I'm going to be using a parallelogram again. And I'm going to be saying display tax. I used small t for it. And what color did I use first? So I'm going to be using blue for it. Also, I need to connect both of them to the output because in either of the case, if I only connect this, then if it's greater than 500,000, if the tax is 30% of earnings, it's never going to be get displayed. So I need to connect both of them here to the output. And this is how we do it. And finally, once you have displayed all your outputs, you will end your flowchart or stop it. And the color we used is red. And this is the end of your flowchart. So if you see, this is your whole flowchart. If I try to, so this is the final flowchart for our problem that we have created. Okay. So I've written down the steps to do it. And in case you want to refer back again to this recitation, you can follow the steps instead of watching the whole video. And this is the same. Okay. Yep. One more thing is this small circle, which is the connector button. So this is used to remove the clutter. So this doesn't look good having two arrows here. So what we can do is have a connector symbol, which is used to like merge all the arrows and get one final arrow from it. So this is the connector button. I'm gonna just reduce its size a little. And I'm gonna connect both the output to the connector and connect the connector to the output. So this looks visually better, and that's why when we have multiple arrows coming in and we want to send it to one box, it's better to use a connector and then get it to the output. Okay. So this is your first. If you want to export it again, just export as, choose the extension PNG or JPG, whatever you prefer, and display the output there. So this is our final flowchart. See which flowchart looks better, this one or this one where I have color coded it. So this is much easier to read, I feel, rather than having all in the same colors. It's difficult to tell. Okay. So, and also the text in it can be a little different. Like there's not one exact correct solution. So you see there's some difference in the text that I've written here and in the flowchart we created. That's fine as long as it's logically correct. The text could be a little different, like saying earnings less than 500,000 rather than using a symbol or something like that. So coming to the pseudocode, let's compare it to the flowchart. So if you refer to the guide, so the start is basically the start and stop is stop. And inside it, we do our flow, whatever the problem is. Input are always done as read. So convert these input boxes to read. So read revenues, read expenses. Calculations are done as compute. So all the rectangular buttons are done as compute. So compute earnings as revenues minus expenses. So we just write the same things. For decision now, it's interesting is we use if. So we say if earnings are less than 500,000, then and then if earnings are less than 1,000, this. So then we do this. We come to this block, and that is compute, because it's a rectangle, and process button, and taxes as earnings into 20%. And if this is not true, that is in the else case, we go to the other arrow and compute taxes as earnings into 30%. And after both the cases are covered, we say end the if statement. Finally, we come to the output, and we, for this parallelogram, we always use display. So see, both the parallelograms have different meanings. So for input, we say read, and for the output, we say display, and we say display taxes, and then finally stop. So this is a reference. If you have a flowchart ready, it's easier to write the pseudocode. Okay. So, sorry. Okay. So this is our next problem. So you have to try the next two problems on your own. I'll try and explain the problem to you so that you can attempt it. You can pause the video and attempt it, and then try it on your own, and then you can see the solution. So create a flowchart and pseudocode in the following order case. So you have orders of burgers and pizzas, and which you can take as input. Then you calculate the cost of the bill. That is, burgers and pizzas are like the number of burgers someone orders and the number of pizzas they are ordering. So that is your input. And you calculate the final cost of the bill, which is 5 times burgers plus 8 times pizzas. Cause the cost of burger is $5 and cost of pizza is 8. After you get that, you check if the total cost is greater than $10, then you give them a free coupon. Otherwise, you don't do anything. And after you have done this, you just display the total cost. And this is the end of the process. So pause the video here and try designing the flowchart. And after that, writing the pseudocode for this problem. Okay, so hope you have attempted this on your own and have the solution. So I'll just go through it. So as I said, burgers and pizzas are the input. And we then check, after we calculate the total cost, we check if it is less than 10 or not. So this time we have two outputs. So if it's greater than 10, we have to give a free coupon. So if it's yes, total cost, then we provide the free coupon. And if it's that's considered as a process as well and not as an output, sorry. And if it is not the case, if the cost is less than $10, then we don't have to do anything. So there's not an extra rectangle this time. We directly display the output cost, which is the total cost. So this is our flowchart. And then you can just write the pseudocode for it, which is much simpler this time. We do not have an else case this time. And there's only if total cost is greater than 10, provide free coupon. And the rest of it is easily translated based on the blocks. Okay. So we have one more problem, one more example you can go through. That is, a store offers a discount for silver and gold card members. Those with gold card obtain a 20% discount, while the silver card holders get a 10% discount. And also there are some people who are not any card holders and they do not get a discount at all. So finally, you need to tell, if a person comes to the store, how much discount they're gonna get. So a simple way of thinking about is there can be three cases this time rather than two cases. A person comes to the shop, you can ask them, which card do you have, silver or gold? Or you can ask them, do you have a membership or not? If they do not have a membership, they don't get any discount. If they have a membership, then you ask if it's a silver card or a gold card. And if it's a silver, you tell them it's a 10% discount. If it's gold, you tell them 20% discount, and then you display it. So this is where you have to. So first time you had two possibilities. Last time we had only one case. This time we have three cases, three possible scenarios which can happen. So pause the video and try attempting it on your own. Okay, so if you have tried it, let's see the solution. So we start, and let me just say this problem can have different type of approaches and solutions. And If you have any, if you think you have a different solution and if you think is correct, you can like, what we can do, you can email it to me if you wanted me to check that, and I can tell you if it's a correct solution for it or not. Like, it might be it's different from this, but it can still be correct. So here what I'm doing is checking card holder category. Then so we have two inputs, card holder category and membership type. So for the first card holder category, we ask that if you're a card holder or not. So if they are not, that means they do not get any discount. So we say discount is 0, and then we go down. But if the answer to it is yes, then we again have a decision to make, if it's gold or silver. So we ask, are you a gold member or not? Then we say yes and give them 20% discount if they say yes. If they say no, we give them a 10% discount. So now we have the discount in all three cases, so we can display the discount. Another possible solution could have been, instead of asking gold member, you ask them if you are a silver member or not. And if they say yes, so in the yes arrow, you will have 10%, and in the no arrow, you will have 20%. So there can be different variations of a solution, but as long as it's logically correct, uh, the solution would be all right. But you cannot do like, if it's a gold member, and if the answer is yes, you cannot give them 10% discount and for no 20% discount. That would be counted as a wrong solution. Okay. And similarly, here you'll have an if statement inside another if statement, because it's a decision inside a decision. So that's how it is there. So if a cardholder category is true, then we'll go to the second decision, which is again an if. Otherwise, we'll compute discount as 0% and end if. If it's true, then we again check if it's gold member true. If gold member is equal to true, then we give them 20%, else with this, and then we end inside this decision, we end. So this is basically a decision inside a decision, or nesting of decisions that we are doing here. It could be similar to like the nesting of lists we did in the HTML, and yeah, some examples like that. So to summarize this recitation, you should have a basic understanding of flowcharts and pseudocode, and we have covered a few examples. Do go through the guides that I've given the link there, and please mark the attendance form, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Thank you, and I'll see you all next week.